Tara Lyons of Team Tara Lyons with Royal LePage. I service the whole Quinte area, which is made up of Belleville and Trenton, and don't forget about lovely Prince Edward County and all our little areas like Madoc, Marmora, and Tweed. So I have an awesome guest today, and this is Paul Lasante, and I'm so excited for you to meet him. Take it away, Paul.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Tara. So yeah, my name is Paul Lasante. I'm with the Legacy Realty Group under the Keller Williams signature umbrella. I'm based in Oakville, Ontario.
Where did we meet, Paul? Was that in Whistler? Was that our first time?
I think that was the first time we had a longer conversation. I think we had crossed paths at the Toronto Richard Robbins events.
Paul has all these incredible ideas, and I should have had it here in front of me, but I have it at my office, my actual office, not my home office here. And do you have one? This is so awesome. This journal, and nobody knows this yet, Paul. So this is what I started this week. The 5 a.m. club.
Oh.
Yes. So if nobody knows what that is, message me because it's getting up at 5 a.m., which this doesn't like to do. And so that legacy journal is actually going to come in very handy for me because I'm going to be able to make some notes in it and all of that. So I will be using it faithfully every day.
Excellent. I'm glad. That was the point.
Yeah.
For obviously a lot of people won't get to see the inside, but it's basically got a typical journal, but it's also got a lot of questions and things to consider about how your priorities fit within your life and how to adjust your life maybe a little bit to make sure you're aligning yourself with those priorities.
And aligning yourself with people who have similar priorities or goals. And that's one thing that I have found has really created and helped towards our success, be it our clients who we love and adore. It's that law of attraction, right? And so we have people like Paul who we also connect with. And so when you sent me that was a nice little treasure that we got at Christmas. Hey, Paul, we're going to talk real estate because, of course, that's why everybody's tuned in.
Absolutely.
And we have the most important question of all that everybody's always asking is, what's going on with the market and what's the average price on the market?
So Oakville's a little different than some of the surrounding areas in the fact that we have relatively few condo apartments. So what happens is we actually have a higher percentage of freehold or non-condo homes. So our average price for January was 1.4 million. But then what I like to do is I'll separate it between detached, I'll put townhomes and semi-detached homes together, and then condos. So our detached homes average price was 1.7 million. And then, so we have a lot of semi-detached and townhomes in our market, and they're around 950. And then our condos, it's interesting. So our condos are around 1 million as well. And that's because we have some really beautiful lakefront properties. So a lot of our high-rise condos are along the lakeshore, along lake. So it tends to keep prices a bit high, but we have seen a decrease. I'm sure you have as well over the past several months now. What I'm finding, and you're probably going to be the same, is if a house is pretty and it's priced well, it'll sell. So a lot of buyers now don't want to take on a project or a perceived project.
Yes.
So they want something that looks turnkey. And so those homes, when they're priced well, tend to sell.
What is your average days on market right now?
Yeah, so again, overall 73, I think was for January, but then you break that down, detached was 57, and then townhomes and semis were 51, and the condos were 66. So they're a bit higher, again, because they're relatively higher priced for a condo or condominium apartment.
So it's interesting to hear your numbers. Our average number of days right now in the whole Quinte area, 70 days. So our average house price in Belleville is 499,000, 500,000. And yes, everybody who's from my area, I'm just specifically talking Belleville, but I have numbers for every one of your areas, but we'd be here a while if I went through them. What's interesting with that is a year ago, it was like 20, right?
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at our average house price a year ago, we were at 635. Wow. So we have seen $135,000 on average change in our market. And for the first time in my career, which I've been doing this for 23 years. How long have you been in it, Paul?
Almost 9.
9. Okay. So in that time I've been in it, for the first time, I just saw a $22 million property come on the market.
Wow.
In Prince County. And my jaw dropped because we just don't have that. So it's interesting. The fact that we have lots over $1 million now is amazing.
Yeah, I think that on that note, it's important that when we talk about days on market and average price and all these other factors, that $22 million home becomes part of the statistic.
Yes.
So that's why when we talk with our clients, we look at these specifics, because a home that's not in the $22 million range shouldn't be using that data when comparing theirs. But I think that it is very important to know that they exist, to know that this is where the market is heading overall. We've got highs and lows,
Yes.
because it allows us to make those better decisions and help our clients. That's what the comparative market analysis that we do, right? That's where we look at the specific homes. What homes are we competing against when we're going up on a sale? And we'll say, okay, the market's trending this way. These homes are on the market. If they've been on the market longer than our average days on market, there's a good chance that it's overpriced. So we need to make sure that we take that into account when we're pricing our own listings.
Yes, it's true. And that's why I know when people will send us a message and say, hey, can you give us a price? Especially some people that are doing that through the internet or online, right? In some version or another. And they want you to give them a price of their home without you ever seeing it. And you can have two identical homes exactly beside each other in the same neighborhood. And one's going to sell for a certain price and the other's going to sell for another one because of what it looks like inside.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say that there's a value to good marketing, good negotiating. That's why you've been around for so long, right? Is because even among those, there are market factors and then there are personal factors. And as much as the market will give us a range, that can sometimes, especially in a market where it's declining and there's uncertainty, having a professional like yourself, obviously, that allows sellers to get to the high part of that range and buyers to get to the lower part of that range, because you have an ability to see beyond just the average and beyond what just the market says it should sell for.
Right now, we would call it a buyer's market. We came through that switch, but we're also saying we're pretty much close to the bottom of the market. Don't listen to the news, listen to your realtor, because we have the specifics for our areas. And Paul and I may have very similar things that are happening, but they can also be incredibly different in different neighborhoods within our cities as well and within our areas, because it's not just that general average that we talk about.
I was going to say that, especially in a market like yours, where you probably have people continuing to come from Toronto specifically, the developments that are coming up, the areas that are better suited for younger families or young professionals or different things that a non-local realtor just doesn't have that contextual knowledge.
It's true, because you really do want to know what's being developed around you, especially if you're going into a new subdivision, right? So we're looking, basically what we're saying to people right now is, if you're a buyer, now's the time. You're looking for the bottom of the market, we're in it. How long is that bottom going to last? Well, that's a great educated guess. And that educated guess is we've got maybe a couple more months before it starts to balance out. And then into next year, we should see some balance and maybe some potential increases. All that being said, you never know what can happen.
What we look at when I'm working with buyers and sellers is individual motivation. So when I'm working with buyers in a market like this, there are very few sellers who are putting up their hands saying, we're really motivated, right? Because they're not used to doing that. So they just put it on the market. So what I tell my clients, especially my buyer clients, is we don't know how motivated a seller is until we receive a response to a written offer.
Yes.
So the challenge with that from a buyer perspective is you're essentially agreeing to buy a home for the foreseeable future for you and your family. So there's an emotional component to testing that. I find that there are a lot more sellers who are motivated to get an active sale, pending sale, getting to just the agreement to close, that there are opportunities out there. I do think that we hit bottom, especially with the interest rates. The Bank of Canada's last rate announcement, they specifically said they don't want to raise rates for at least the foreseeable future. And that makes sense. That's what I do a lot. Benjamin Tal, for example, is a great resource. I don't think that they can keep raising rates without negative effects. So I think that there are opportunities for buyers. I think it's a good time. My philosophy with clients is there are two components to moving, right? There's the market and then there's the personal side. So if it's appropriate for someone to buy or sell right now, I think that there's always an appropriate time to make it work. We've just had, so Benjamin Tal actually made a good point in one of his previous conversations, or referencing him quite a bit today. He said basically for most of 2020, all of 2021 and part of 2022, we basically borrowed buyers from the future. We borrowed transactions from the future. And this is, you mentioned, listen to the headlines. We have CP24, we have a lot of news outlets that are Toronto based, and they'll still use numbers like, oh, the market's down 30%, 50%. A lot of times they're talking about the number of transactions, not the prices. And so this is why I tell my clients, don't just look at the news. You have to look at more than that. When you're getting advice from someone, it's a good question to ask yourself is, what's in it for them, right? What's the incentive for someone to tell you this? So news outlets get clicks, they get paid for their advertisement, and that's how they're incentivized. So we had in 2021 a record number of transactions across the country, right? Record number, almost double what the highest number was, which was actually the year before. So when we see a decrease, it's actually a decrease from an outlier, from something that didn't even register prior to that year. So we're actually transaction-wise, we're back to a relatively normal market in terms of number of transactions. It just feels slow. It's like driving a race car and then getting out and going into a go-kart. It just feels slower because of what you've been used to. And I think we have a tendency as humans to focus on the negative, right? That's a psychological thing called loss aversion. We tend to value losses more than an equal amount of gain. Just like you said, if the market had dipped by 20% and then shot back up, we'd be like, whoo, phew, it came up and down. We're like, oh my goodness, it's terrible. But if you look at the trend beyond 1 or 2 years, you look back 5 years, 10 years and look at that trend, we're still not that bad.
No, we're great still. We're great in our area because we've never seen prices where we are still right now.
Yeah.
I was talking with a client that we're talking pricing pre-2016. And actually, I think it was probably about 2016. We were around average of 220. We have an average house price of 500. That's incredible. That's incredible. We've doubled in the last 6 years. Like it's something you don't see in real estate.
No, and it's scary when you start assuming that the trend, the beyond normal trend will continue.
We have 500,000 immigrants coming in. And people have a misconception of immigrants. They think these people are coming in, but they're coming in with money. They have to qualify to come into the country, and they have to qualify with money as well. And so they want to buy property, they want to spend, and whether they come into Toronto, they come into the larger centers, and then they either stay and make people spread out, or they come in and spread out.
That's right. I don't know what the foreign buyer ban that came into effect this year. We're editing a video now on it that we did. I expect that to be essentially neutral. I don't expect that to affect our market at all. I don't know about how it is out near you.
It's like less than 5%, not even of our market. It's not going to affect us. Not much. It'll affect some people, and I feel bad for the ones that it will, but it's not a huge percentage.
Yeah, I think that's
the exception.
Yeah, exactly. I have a couple of clients who, one of them is Canadian, so they're not affected. And the other thing about immigration that you mentioned is, again, Benjamin Tall made a comment at one of his talks. A lot of the immigrants that are coming are actually students.
Yes.
Right? They're actually
and they're already here. A lot of them. They're staying.
Yeah.
Instead of going back. And we're trying to promote them to stay because we've educated them.
That's right. And they're contributors. The government likes them because they're contributors to our GDP, et cetera. Yeah.
This has been awesome, Paul. I really love chatting with you. It's just always interesting and how your mind works and how things come out. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Tara. It's been great.